Welcome to Unit 2, Lesson 3, Structures. This is a bit complex topic if you're new to programming, and so I'm going to take this in different sections and just show you step by step how to create structures and why do we use them and what they are. So first of all, there we go. So a structure is basically when we create a data type. It's just a complex data type that can contain many different properties. It can contain variables, it can contain constants, and also functions. And so here's an example of a definition of a very simple structure called person. And we start with the keyword struct. So this is a reserved word, lowercase. Person is the name that I choose to call my structure. I can choose any name that I want. For convention purposes, we're going to capitalize the first letter of structures because we capitalize the first letter of data types like strings, the S is capitalized, int, the I is capitalized. So we're going to keep that same convention. And then inside the structure, we just have a variable called name of data type string. Okay. Now let's just think about what a structure is. First of all, structure is a record. So if you think of think of a student record. You go up to school and your school has a record. Your university has a record for you. And so in this record, we typically have things about the student, like their student ID number, their name, address, phone number, emergency contact, the birth date, all that stuff is in this student record. And we want to keep the record nice and tidy. Like if you think of a file cabinet and you have a folder in a file cabinet and it has all the information about a student in a folder. Our record is like that folder and it contains everything about the student, and we're just going to keep it in a nice and tidy record. And so in that example that I was saying, let's say that our structure is student, and we said that we want the student ID in this record, and we want all kinds of stuff like the first name, the last name, and we could go on and on and on with all the information that we want about this record. So this is my student record. This is not the syntax of a record, obviously. We're just designing our records, and we're going to say these are the things that I want in my record. So these are the properties. And I would think about like what would be the data type that I want. So I know a student ID, I just have to look at it and compare it. So I'm just going to make that a string, and the first name of course will be a string and last name is a string. Notice that when we save things like in programming, we don't ever put people's names all together. We always separate first, middle, and last name. The reason we do that is because we sometimes have to search by a last name, and if we have to search by a last name, it's easier if it's stored in a separate variable. Same thing we do for addresses. For addresses, we'll save the street address separate from the city, separate from the state, separate from the country, because sometimes we want to run reports like how many students do we have from Dallas? How many students do we have from the state of Arkansas or from Canada? So we would have to have these in a separate variable. So this is a student record, and of course there's all kinds of other things that we could put in this record. But right now that's all we're going to put in there. And then we would have a record for each student on campus. And that would be thousands and thousands of records because we keep old records. So this would be the reason that you would want to use a struct, okay? You want to keep the data, all the data relates to each other is what you keep inside a struct. We're also going to learn in just a little bit how we put functions inside structs. And we'll look at that in just a second. But let's get back to here. So the next thing here is we're looking at how do we access the property values. So if I have defined this person struct, how do I get to the name? And so here I've defined a constant called lowercase person. Now this person here is not the same as this. This is a lowercase, so this is just a plain old variable. This is a data type. And it's confusing. You don't have to do that. You could say it let P1 equals. I don't like the way they do that here because it looks like you have to do it this way, but you don't. You just choose any name for your constant and then you assign it the struct person, so the data type person, and you initialize that person's name to Jasmine. So name colon Jasmine. So the name Jasmine gets passed to here. It gets initialized. And then when I print person.name, I'm going to see the name Jasmine. So what I want to show you is in your exercises, I want to show you the language that it uses to ask you to do these kinds of things, because the most confusing thing for students is reading the questions and trying to come up with the language. So this is your actual exercise, your assignment. And it says, the very first one says, imagine that you're creating some kind of app for monitoring location. It says create a GPS struct. Okay, so GPS struct. So that tells you the name of the struct that they want you to use. GPS. And then it says, give me just a second. I'm going to go ahead and put my open and curly braces so I don't forget those. And then it says that it wants it to have two variable properties, two vars. One var, two, I don't want to put anything yet. It's so smart, it wants to do it for me, but I don't want it to do it for me. Okay, so I have two vars, two variable properties. One is called latitude and one is called longitude, okay? So I'm going to call this one latitude, latitude. I'm going to call this one longitude. And then it says that it wants both with default values of 0.0. Now 0.0 is a what? It's a double. So on here we're going to put colon double equals 0.0 and colon double equals 0.0. Okay? And that's what it wanted us to do. So it gives you the name of the struct. It gives you two variable properties. It gives you the name of them, and it gives you what to initialize them to. Depending on what you're initializing them, it will give you, that's a hint of what the data type is. So if you initialized it to the name Joe and Mary, then these would be strings. Not that you would do that, but. Okay, so the next thing it says to create a variable instance, an instance of GPS called someplace, and it should be initialized without supplying any arguments. Okay, so if we remember to create the instance of a variable, we have to, going back over here, we can say let person equal, we could have var, it could be a variable, it could be a constant, either one. Here it says variable instance, so we're going to say var, and we're going to pick some name, it tells us to use someplace. So it'll be bar. It says to use some place equals. So I'm going to create a variable instance of GPS. So now I'm going to call GPS because that is exactly what we have here. And then inside my parentheses, I'm going to, for this one it said not to initialize it. So it should be initialized without supplying any arguments. I don't give it any arguments. Remember, the things that go in parentheses are the arguments. So stuff in here would be the arguments. And it's saying that we don't want to put any arguments in it. So we're just going to do open and close parentheses. That's it. And then it says that it wants us to print out the latitude and the longitude. So going back over here, we're going to do a print someplace dot latitude, print someplace dot longitude. Print someplace dot latitude go. Print someplace dot longitude. So looking back over here, I use the name of the instance of the structure. So person here, and someplace here, this is what we call the instance. I'm creating an instance of GPS called someplace, and I'm now referencing that instance and saying someplace at latitude, someplace longitude. Notice here at the bottom, someplace latitude is 0 and longitude is 0 because I didn't change it inside these parentheses. I didn't pass it in any parameters. And that's what it asks us to do in the third place, in the third exercise, is that this time it says change someplace latitude to 51 and longitude to 0.12. So I've already created the instance here, so I don't have to do that again. Well, actually I do. And so I want to kind of show you, I want to show you two ways to do this. Notice that if I do this, so if I do command copy and I paste it here, and I try to put the values there, it's going to tell me that's already been declared. That's kind of why I took a pause. I was trying to think of how to do this. So I've already declared someplace here. So I'm going to comment this out. This is not what it's asking, but I just want to show you something. I'm going to comment this out. And actually, I want to copy all this. Command copy, make my life easier because I'm not the best typist. Then in here, I'm actually going to change longitude and latitude. So I'm going to type in latitude, and I'm going to assign latitude a value of 51 point, what's it say? 514004, and comma, longitude 0. By the way, to get rid of, when this comes up, you see this here and it's in your way, you just press escape and you can get rid of it. It's trying to help you. 125226. Okay. And then I delete my comments. So I commented this out so that I would be able to create this instance here. I can't create two instances of the same variable. So I did it this way. Now, the other way that we can do this is that we can, if we have an instance of some place, so this is one way, but what it wanted you to do was actually this. So instead of creating another instance, which causes a lot of problems, it wants us to change the value of longitude and latitude. And the way we're going to do that is by saying someplace dot latitude equals and someplace dot longitude equals. So I have an instance here. I printed the initialized value. I then changed the value, and I print it again. So I just wanted to show you the two that you could initialize it. When you create the instance, you can put stuff inside the parentheses and initialize it to those values. Okay, so that is your basic creating your structures with some of the properties, some variables, and then how to access those values inside. And then the next step is we can add functions to our structures. And the functions, the reason that we have functions is that these are functions that we, things that we might do often with the data, and we don't want to have to redo these functions over and over again, so we put them in here. For example, let's say that our student record. Let's say that I want a function to, let's say in my record, I have all the classes that the student has taken and the grades per semester, okay? And so maybe I have a function that prints out the classes that he's taken by semester and gives me his GPA for each semester. It calculates it. So I could have a function to do that, which is it's a pretty complex thing. I've got to get all the classes for spring 20, let's see, 15, print those out, and then calculate the GPA. That could be one function. I could have a function that just gives me the person's full name, so maybe concatenates the first name to the middle name to the last name. It could be something as simple as that. So looking at this example, they created, for the person, they created a function called say hello. And inside this function, they print hello there, my name is, and then they put this name in there. Here, they've initialized or created an instance, initialized and created an instance of person. So we created one person with the name of Jasmine, and then we call the function person.sayhello. So earlier, just like I said, earlier we had person.name, and we could change the name equals. Here we're just going to exit the function by having the instance of the structure and then calling the function. So if we go back to this example, here we could add a function inside here. Okay, maybe the function is to print function. Let's take a look really quickly. Notice that the convention for the function name is lowercase camel spelling, so the next word would be capital letters. So we could say function print the data. And open curly brace, and then here inside we would just print and then we put here we have name, we just want to print longitude and latitude. So we could print latitude, latitude is, kind of like they had there. And then we want to put latitude in here. Now notice latitude, I don't have to put anything in front of this, like something dot latitude, because I'm inside the structure. So I can access latitude without having to put anything in front of it. Okay, so I have latitude, and then maybe I also put longitude, longitude is longitude is what did I miss? Latitude. Let's see. Expected parentheses in argument list. Okay. Let's just do two of these. Sure, it doesn't like it. Oh, well, no. Of latitude is why is it not taking this? See, sometimes the errors, oh gosh, I see it. Sometimes the errors are not, okay, so it says expected parentheses argument list of function declaration. I was not reading the error. So it's looking at the function declaration. I was thinking it was giving me an error here. But it's because I forgot my open and close parentheses. Okay. Let's go back to what I had. All right, here we go. Sorry about that. I should read the errors. Okay, so when I do this here, I have this function, and then down here, I can just call the function by saying someplace dot print the data. and it's a function, so I have to put my open and close parentheses. When I go down here, so just like here, a person dot say hello. I call my function. Oh, I don't have to say that. I just say, there we go. Sorry about that. So I'm just calling the function print the data. It's a function for the structure someplace. And so in this part, remember, this is an instance. Someplace is an instance of GPS. I'm not initializing it to anything. I then call the function of the instance of GPS, and it prints this first line right here. Latitude is 0.0, longitude is 0.0. So I keep using the word instance and initializing. Those are things that you do need to know and you'll be tested on. So what is the instance of this, and how many instances did we create, what's the name of the structure, etc. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video here and then go to part 2. And part 2 is going to talk about we talked about instances already. We did all this. So we're going to talk about different ways to initialize our structures, just some different ways, and then get into custom initializers, and that's it. So we'll talk a lot about initializing structures. But for right now, we looked at instances. Just to look at these examples, we have a structure called shirt. It has these attributes. We have a variable called size, a variable called color. We are creating 2 instances of shirt. One instance is called my shirt, the other instance is called your shirt. They're both constants, the instances. So it means we're never going to change them again. My shirt has been initialized to XL and blue. Your shirt has been initialized to M for medium and red. This is a structure called car. It has all these properties. We have 1, 2, 3 attributes. The make of the car, the year, and the color. One's a string, int, string. Then we have the function, start the engine. It doesn't do anything. Function, drive the engine, doesn't do anything. Function, park, doesn't do anything. Function, steer direction. It takes the direction, but does not do anything with it. Like it doesn't print it or calculate it. Okay, so this is where we define the structure. This is the definition of the struct. The struct's called car. Now these are 2 instances of car. One instance is called first car, and one instance is called second car. First car is initialized to the make Honda, year 2010, and color blue. And then the second one is initialized to Ford 2013 black. So I can print, if I print car dot first, if I print first car dot make, first car dot year, first car dot color, I'm going to get these 3 values. If I say first car dot start engine, the function doesn't display anything, right? If I say first car.drive, the function doesn't do anything because there's nothing inside these curly braces. But I could put things like printf, I have started my engine. Printf, I have started to drive. Printf, I'm now in park, or something like that, right? But I could add that functionality. This is just an example to kind of drive in what we mean by functions in structures. So once again, our structures, the, the variables and functions that we put in them are all related to one another. We don't want the stuff all scattered, so we put it in a nice little struct. And then we have to make instances and then access what's inside the struct by the instance of our structure. So this is like the blueprint. This is the blueprint of car, and here I'm making cars. I'm in the assembly line making cars. Okay. All right, so we'll look at part 2 and initializing in detail.